There comes a moment in every empath's life when something quietly changes. It doesn't happen with loud announcements or dramatic endings. It happens in the silence. After years of explaining yourself to people who never truly listened, after endlessly trying to fix relationships that only left you emotionally exhausted, after carrying burdens that were never yours to carry, you reach a place where your soul simply whispers, "Enough." That is the beginning of the silent season. It is not a season of loneliness. It is not a season of punishment. It is a season of restoration. It is the moment you stop fighting for spaces that were never meant to hold your peace. For so long, you believed your kindness could change people. You believed if you loved harder, gave more, forgave quicker, and understood deeper, everything would eventually work out. Every time someone hurt you, instead of asking why they treated you that way, you questioned yourself. You replayed conversations in your mind, searching for mistakes that didn't exist. You apologized just to keep the peace, even when your heart was the one bleeding. You carried guilt that belonged to others, because your empathy made you believe everyone deserved another chance. But something remarkable happens when an empath becomes tired of abandoning themselves. You begin to realize that constantly explaining your intentions to people committed to misunderstanding you is a battle you can never win. You discover that not everyone deserves access to your heart, your time, or your energy. Most importantly, you learn that your value does not increase because someone finally decides to recognize it. Silence becomes your greatest teacher. Instead of reacting, you observe. Instead of defending yourself against every accusation, you let your character speak. Instead of chasing people who walk away, you allow them to continue walking. At first, this feels unfamiliar because you've spent so much of your life believing that love meant constant effort. But now you understand that real love never requires you to lose yourself just to keep someone else comfortable. People may mistake your silence for weakness. Some may think you've become cold or distant because you no longer respond the way you used to. Let them think that. They are reacting to the version of you they could control. They are confused because the person who once explained every feeling, answered every message immediately, and carried everyone's emotional weight has quietly disappeared. In that silence, you are not becoming less loving. You are becoming wiser. Your silence is no longer empty. It is filled with clarity, self-respect, and a peace that no longer depends on anyone else's approval. And once an empath discovers that kind of peace, there is no desire to return to the noise that once consumed their soul, because sometimes the most powerful thing an empath will ever say is absolutely nothing. One of the greatest breakthroughs in an empath's life comes when they finally understand this truth. Pain survives through attention. For years, every wound felt permanent because you kept returning to it. You replayed the betrayal, reread the messages, remembered the arguments, and asked yourself 1,000 times why it happened. Your heart wasn't just hurt once. It was hurt repeatedly by your own mind. And that's not because you were weak. It's because empaths feel deeply, remember deeply, and often believe that if they think hard enough, they'll find the answer that finally brings peace. But peace rarely comes from replaying the past. It comes from releasing your grip on it. There is a powerful difference between feeling pain and feeding pain. Feeling pain is human. Feeding pain is staying emotionally attached to the story long after the lesson has arrived. The silence season teaches you to stop turning old wounds into daily rituals. You begin to notice your emotions instead of becoming them. You learn to say, "I feel hurt," rather than "I am broken." That small shift changes everything. When someone disappoints you, you no longer spend weeks trying to decode their behavior. When someone leaves, you stop chasing explanations that may never come. When life comes unfair, you stop asking, "Why is this happening to me?" and start asking, "What is this teaching me?" That is the moment pain begins to lose its power, because pain can only control the person who believes they must carry it forever. Many empaths secretly wait for closure from other people. They hope for the apology, the recognition, the admission of wrongdoing. They believe healing will begin once the other person finally understands the damage they caused. But the silence season reveals a hard truth. Some people will never give you the closure you deserve. And if your peace depends on their awareness, your peace remains trapped in their hands. So you take it back. You stop seeking revenge. You stop needing everyone to understand your side. You stop trying to prove that your pain was real. You simply honor what you felt, learn from it, and refuse to let it become your identity. That doesn't mean life stops hurting. It means hurt stops owning you. The empath who enters this season becomes different. They still care, but they no longer collapse under every disappointment. They still love, but they no longer lose themselves trying to be loved back. They still feel deeply, but they no longer drown in every emotion that passes through them. And that is where true healing begins. Not when pain disappears, but when pain no longer decides who you are. As you move deeper into the silent season, you begin to understand something that once felt impossible to accept. Protecting your energy is no longer optional. It is essential. For most of your life, you believed your purpose was to carry other people's pain. You listened when no one else would. You comforted those who were falling apart, even when you were quietly falling apart yourself. You became the safe place for everyone, but somewhere along the way you forgot to become a safe place for yourself. An empath often mistakes self-sacrifice for love. You say yes when every part of you wants to say no. You answer calls when you're emotionally exhausted. You solve problems that were never yours to solve. You give people your time, your attention, your patience, and your heart, believing that one day they will return the same care. But the silent season teaches a difficult lesson. Not everyone values what comes naturally to you. Some people don't appreciate your kindness. They simply become comfortable consuming it. That realization is painful at first. You begin to notice how certain conversations always leave you drained. You recognize relationships where your role has always been to fix, rescue, or reassure. You see how often your peace was interrupted because you believed someone else's crisis had to become your responsibility. Slowly, your eyes open, and you realize that constantly saving everyone else has been costing you your own emotional well-being. This is where healthy boundaries begin. A boundary is not a wall built to keep people out. It is a door that allows you to decide who enters your life and how they treat you once they're there. It is the quiet confidence to say, I care about you, but I will not destroy myself trying to save you. For an empath, those words may feel uncomfortable at first. Guilt may whisper that you're being selfish. But protecting your peace is not selfish. It is wisdom. You stop feeling responsible for emotions that don't belong to you. You stop apologizing for needing rest. You stop explaining why you need space. You realize that your compassion has far more value when it comes from a full heart instead of an exhausted one. Because you cannot pour healing into others if your own spirit has been running empty for years. The people who truly love you will respect your boundaries. They won't punish you for taking care of yourself. They won't demand unlimited access to your time or emotional energy. And those who become angry because you finally have limits often reveal that they benefited more from your lack of boundaries than from your happiness. The silent season doesn't make you less compassionate. It teaches you to direct some of that compassion toward yourself. You still have a kind heart, but now it is protected by wisdom instead of guilt. Because the strongest empath is not the one who gives everything away, but the one who knows what must be protected. One of the quietest but most life-changing moments in the silent season is discovering who truly belongs in your life. You don't uncover this through confrontation. You don't need long arguments, emotional speeches, or dramatic goodbyes. You discover it simply by becoming still. The moment you stop chasing, stop over-explaining, and stop carrying relationships by yourself, everything becomes clear. For years, you may have believed certain people loved you deeply because they were always around. But now you begin to notice something uncomfortable. Were they really showing up for you? Or were you doing all the emotional work that kept the relationship alive? How many conversations continued only because you always reached out first? How many friendships survived because you kept forgiving the same behavior? How many relationships existed because you constantly made excuses for people who never treated you with the same care you offered them? Silence answers questions that words never could. When you stop sending the first message, some people disappear. When you stop fixing every misunderstanding, some relationships quietly fall apart. When you stop making yourself available every time someone needs something, certain people suddenly become distant. At first, this can feel heartbreaking. You may wonder if you did something wrong. But the truth is often much simpler. Your silence didn't push the right people away. It revealed who was only connected to the version of you that never stopped giving. This realization hurts because empaths naturally believe in potential. You see the good in people even when they fail to show it consistently. You wait for them to become who you know they could be, But the silent season teaches you to stop building your life around potential and start accepting reality. People reveal themselves through patterns, not promises. They show you who they are through consistent actions, not occasional words. There is also freedom in realizing that you don't have to convince anyone to value you. You don't have to beg for respect, attention, or love. The people who genuinely care about you will notice your silence. They'll check on you because your presence matters to them, not because they need something from you. They'll respect your boundaries without making you feel guilty. They'll appreciate your heart without expecting you to sacrifice it. As an empath, letting go doesn't mean becoming bitter. It doesn't mean wishing harm on those who couldn't meet you where you stood. It simply means accepting that not everyone is meant to walk with you forever. Some people were lessons, some were seasons, and some were only mirrors reflecting the places where you still needed to grow. So you release them without anger. You bless them without chasing them. You move forward without carrying resentment, because resentment only ties you to the past you are trying to leave behind. And in that peaceful release, you create space for the people who will value your presence without requiring you to lose yourself to earn their love. By the time you have walked through the silent season, protected your energy, and released the people who were never meant to stay, something extraordinary begins to happen. You become calm, not because life suddenly becomes easy, but because you finally stop allowing every situation to control your emotions. This is the version of the empath that many people never expect to meet. They are used to seeing the person who reacts immediately, who explains endlessly, who carries everyone's feelings, but now they encounter someone different, someone who listens more than they speak, someone who chooses peace over proving a point, someone whose quiet confidence says more than 1,000 words ever could. Many people confuse strength with loudness. They believe the strongest person is the one who argues the hardest, dominates every conversation, or always has the last word. But true strength rarely announces itself. It doesn't need applause. It doesn't need validation. It simply stands firm, even when the world around it becomes chaotic. The mature empath understands this. You no longer react to every criticism because you know that not every opinion deserves your attention. You no longer feel the need to defend your character to people who have already decided to misunderstand you. You stop chasing approval because your self-worth is no longer built on someone else's acceptance. The silent season has taught you that confidence is not something you perform. It is something you become. This calmness doesn't mean you've stopped feeling emotions. You still experience joy, disappointment, love, and sadness. The difference is that your emotions no longer control your decisions. You allow yourself to feel without allowing those feelings to pull you away from your values. You respond instead of reacting. You think before you speak. You choose your battles carefully because you understand that not every conflict deserves your energy. Ironically, this quiet strength often makes a greater impact than constant effort ever did. People begin to notice that your peace cannot be easily disturbed. Those who once expected emotional reactions are surprised when they find patience instead. Those who once tried to provoke you realize they no longer have that power. Your calm becomes your protection. And perhaps the greatest transformation of all is this. You stop measuring your success by how many people like you. Instead, you measure it by how peacefully you sleep at night, how honestly you live, and how closely your life reflects your values. That kind of confidence cannot be taken away because it isn't built on praise. It is built on self-respect. The strongest empath isn't the one who never cries. It isn't the one who never struggles. It is the one who has learned that inner peace is more valuable than winning every argument and more powerful than being understood by everyone. Because when your spirit becomes calm, the world's chaos loses its ability to shake you. After everything you have walked through, something remarkable becomes clear. The silent season was never about escaping pain. It was about becoming someone that pain could no longer control. Life doesn't suddenly become perfect. Difficult days still arrive. People still disappoint you. Unexpected losses still happen. But the difference is that these moments no longer have the power to define your identity or steal your peace. You have changed from the inside, and that inner transformation changes the way you experience everything on the outside. There was a time when every rejection made you question your worth. Every criticism echoed in your mind for days. Every goodbye felt like proof that you weren't enough. But now you understand something you couldn't see before. Other people's choices are not always reflections of your value. Sometimes they simply reveal their own limitations, their own fears, or their own journey. You no longer carry every burden as if it were your personal responsibility. This is emotional freedom. You stop living in survival mode. You stop expecting disaster around every corner because you finally trust yourself to handle whatever life brings. You know that even if your heart gets hurt again, it will also heal again. You know that peace is no longer something another person can give or take away. It has become your home. The beautiful thing about this kind of peace is that it cannot be manipulated. People can no longer control you through guilt because you understand your boundaries. They cannot control you through fear because you have already survived your hardest seasons. They cannot control you through rejection because your confidence is no longer dependent on their approval. They cannot control you through chaos because you have learned that silence is stronger than emotional noise. You begin to notice how much lighter life feels. The energy you once spent worrying about everyone else's opinions is now invested in becoming the person you were always meant to be. You wake up with gratitude instead of anxiety. You make decisions based on wisdom instead of fear. You no longer rush to prove your goodness because you know your character speaks long before your words ever do. And perhaps the greatest gift of all is that your empathy remains intact. You haven't become cold. You haven't stopped caring. Your heart is still compassionate, still generous, still capable of deep love. The difference is that your kindness now comes from strength instead of desperation. You give freely, but you no longer give yourself away. You love deeply, but you no longer abandon yourself in the process. That is the true victory of the silence season. It doesn't turn you into someone without emotions. It turns you into someone whose emotions are guided by wisdom instead of wounds. The pain that once shaped every decision now becomes only a chapter in your story, not the title of your life. So if you are standing in this quiet season today, don't fear the silence. Stay with it. Grow through it. Trust it. Because on the other side of this silence is the strongest version of yourself. A person who cannot be manipulated, cannot be drained, and cannot be broken. Because the peace within has become greater than the pain around.